Welcome back to the Pesty Marketing Podcast, a show that gives pest control operators the tools and tactics to grow 30% year over year without burning out or breaking the bank. Today's guest is Seth Watson, owner of Arete Pest Control, founder of Focus Virtual Assistants. Seth has built a 100% virtual back office, scaled a multi-million-dollar pest control company, and now helps hundreds of other operators do the same, all by leveraging VAs the right way. In this episode, we break down the first roles you should offload, how to train VAs for performance and retention, what not to do if you want to avoid legal trouble, and how companies are using VAs to cut overhead and close more recurring sales. If you're doing between 1 and 20 million and looking to grow fast without bloating your team, this episode is your blueprint. Let's get into it. Seth, welcome to the show.
Hey, Andrew, thanks for having me, man.
Always good to chat, and to have you on the pod is extra special. So Seth, you built a pest control business, started a tax company, and now run one of the largest VA agencies serving pest control companies. So take us back. What was the moment you knew VAs were a serious game changer for our industry?
Honestly, it was using them in my own pest control company. I always tell the story about how it was just during COVID, I couldn't get good help in my office. We would go from running an ad, getting, honestly, in a week, we would do an Indeed ad and get 100 applicants, right? We had so many, it was hard to choose from, to during COVID, we put up an Indeed ad, in 3 weeks, we would get 3 candidates, right? Funny story, one of my good friends, Daryl Lee, out in Georgia, was running a pest control company, and he was telling me this story about he was talking to his friend on the phone who has another pest control company, and he's like, hey, Daryl, hold on 1 second. And he's like, he could tell his son was interviewing. He's like, Dad, what do you want me to do? Should we hire him? And he's like, dang it, son, does the guy have a pulse? He's like, yeah. He's like, okay, hire him and put him in a truck. Like, let's get going, you know? Like, just like everyone else, we struggled at hiring quality people. Wow. We didn't have a hard time getting technicians, but, you know, the moral of that was like, dude, we just had a hard time finding quality people, to the point where we were like, hey, go ahead and breathe on this mirror. Cool. Yep. They've got a breath. Let's put them in a seat and start answering calls, which was a horrible way, right? A horrible experience for customers. And so it transitioned from just not being able to find people to my buddy Jake had a VA agency at the time, talked me into using one. I had the same skeptics as everybody else. Can they speak English? You know, what does it look like? Can they actually help my customers? Once I dove into it, got over those, I ended up hiring one, Maria, who's been with me now for going on 5 years. She's now my assistant manager of my office. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And I realized, like, holy crap, this is a game changer. They're performing better than my US employees. And so we slowly, as one left, we'd replace them with a VA. Now we're to the point where we are today. We're 100% our back office, customer service, collections, billing is all done by virtual assistants.
Yeah, and you've said the pest control industry is uniquely suited for VA support. Why do you think that is, and where do most companies miss the opportunity?
Well, I think it's huge because, one, right, we're in a service industry, right? And so I always give the example of, like, guys, I don't write your check. Honestly, the customers write all of our checks, right? So we're in a service industry. Like it or not, Amazon has changed that. Everyone expects immediate results, great results. And so VAs have been awesome for us and the pest control industry as a whole, because we're able to go out and get high caliber people for these back office jobs, higher than you can get here in the US for a fraction of the cost. But the thing is like, I can go get someone with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree to come work in my business for $8 an hour, where you're battling with Wendy's and McDonald's and call centers to pay 18 to 20 bucks an hour. So it's huge because, again, we have to cater to the customer, and I'm getting high level people to work in your business and take care of your customers. Frankly, they care more than your US people do. So that's a huge way that it fits in, is we can just take better care of our customers. It's awesome. We save a few bucks, but more importantly, I get high quality people.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people underestimate about hiring offshore talent. You know, the Philippines or Latin America, wherever it is, there is talent there. You know, we've had team members now who have been with me for 4 or 5 years, you know, and we have team members who also, I think a lot of people think that you need to tell them A, B, C, D, E, all the way to Z exactly what to do. And I think in some instances that is the case, but that doesn't mean you can't find people who also have a mindset of being proactive. You know, one of our team members, Charlie, our longest VA, is out of the Philippines. He has very specific things that we need him to accomplish. But as part of our culture, and this has trickled down to him, everyone knows that you need to constantly be on the lookout for ways to improve your department, your role, your business, find efficiencies. And so one day he came to his direct manager, who then came to me and said, hey, Charlie has an idea to build out some software for us. He's been learning to code and he thinks he can help us do this one specific aspect of our SEO much more effectively. So I said, cool. Yeah. I mean, if he wants to build it, go for it. So he did. And then he comes back to me with this, nearly finished software that we were able to deploy, and it saved us a bunch of time in the business. So I don't necessarily want to set the expectation that everyone is like that, but it's the same thing in the US. You're going to have employees who just kind of want to be, told what to do. They're going to do it over and over and over again. But you can find people there who are hungry to grow, hungry to make a difference. Just because they're in another country doesn't mean they don't have, a great mindset.
Yeah, it's a great point. I've used you guys we used your PPC for years, right? And we had one of your people that managed our account, and dude, she was better than any US agency that we had, right? I don't know if you want me telling that, but she was really good, right? And that kind of got my mind turning, hey, I think we can trust these, these people, but virtual assistants for higher level jobs. If this is your first time using a VA, don't grab them for high level stuff. Let's get our toes wet a little bit first, right? And let you set yourself up for success. But dude, you're spot on. We can get very, very talented people. And I always just say, do they just live in a poorer country? They're just as bright as we are. They just don't, you know what I mean? We can take advantage of their economy's lower than ours. And so we give them great jobs and we save a ton of money.
Yep, absolutely. So let's say I'm an operator doing $2 million per year in revenue, and I have no VAs yet, 2, 3, 4. What's the first role, or maybe what are the first kind of couple roles that I should offload to a VA, and how do I set them up for success?
No, that's a great question. So first thing, right, we're a little more unique than other agencies, is we're going to come in and meet with you. We're going to do trainings, but for me, at first, a VA needs to free up my high level people to do what they do best, right? If that's I have a killer salesman out in the field, can that virtual assistant now go out and help set up automations, follow up on bids, send out the bids, right? Hopefully they're closing them at the door and doing those things, but a lot of the back office stuff should be able to free them up so they do what they do best, and that's bringing in revenue, right? So for me, my first VA was that. They handled all of my reports, all of the marketing, we track every call that comes in, lead source, what's our cost per call, what's our cost per acquisition, right? We want to know all of that. And I was doing a lot of that work, and I realized Maria, who we hired, is better than me at that, and she's more efficient, but it allows me then to go out and be a visionary in the business. I think the first thing is what's dragging you down, and what can a VA come in to allow your high level people to do what they do best, and they're not stuck in the weeds. So that would be first, right? And then once you get good at it, I don't think there's a job remotely besides go and get your mail that a VA can't do, right? So now the ones that are successful at it, they've got them on the phones doing customer service. They have them billing, routing, scheduling. We have some that hire them in just large companies, and their VA, all they're doing is just working with the schedule. How do we make it more efficient? How do we make the tech's day better? How can we add stops on, right? How can we get more revenue? And so that's a long answer, but honestly, the answer's anything. But I would start, number one is what frees me up or people in my business to generate revenue or do what they do to make their better, to amplify their job.
Yeah, so you guys come in and it sounds like, do you do an assessment? You kind of audit a company's time and figure out where is their time going?
We'll come in and talk with you and say, we'll put realistic expectations. I don't want to say we come in and audit your business, because I'm not, we all run our businesses so differently, but I do want to have that conversation, right? And if we're hey, if VA doesn't make sense, then I'll be the first to tell you that, hey, we need to have this in place because we're just setting them up for failure. But we'll talk about that and say I get this all the time, right? So here's an example, Andrew, is I'll get someone to come in and say, okay, I want someone to call in. I'm going to get a VA, and all I want them to do is sales. Let's have them call commercial restaurants or commercial businesses and just set up appointments for our sales guys. I'm okay, that's awesome. We can find a rock star to do that. And then I'll sit down and we'll talk to them and say, okay, do you have a CRM that they're going to call out of? No. Okay, do you have a list that they're going to call out of? No. Okay, how are you going to get the list? You just want them to go on Google Maps and start start, right? So like we talk about that because we could come and give you a VA, but 90% of the time in that situation, they're going to fall on their face. And it's not because they weren't good. We didn't set them up to be successful, right? So we want to come in and make sure we have proper tools and proper training in place, because a VA is only, and it doesn't matter if you're a VA or you're a high level person you bring into your business, right? Whether you're from the Philippines or Kentucky or wherever you're at, we're only as good as the tools and the training that we give our people. So the same thing applies to VA. So yes, before we allow you, we're going to talk about what's this VA going to do? Are they set up for success? Are you set up so that you and your team are using them to the best of your ability? Because nobody wins if they come in and fail. Then you say, hey, Seth and Focus suck. That might not be the case. It might have been they weren't set up for success.
On that note, what are the biggest mistakes that pest control companies make when trying to hire or train VAs?
So the very first thing, let me emphasize this, right? Preemptively say, like, accent is very important. No one wants to get somebody on their phones that they can't understand and the person's like, are you in America? What are you doing, right? So accent is important. The first thing that people, having said that, the biggest mistake people do when they want to hire a VA is we hire solely off of accent. And accent's important. Don't let me get you wrong. But they will hire somebody that's like doesn't have the skills and the tools that they need in their business just because they sound good. And like I said, I pre-emphasize that because it's important. We can get people that speak great English, perfect English, and those types of things. But like, I would much rather have someone with a slight accent work in my business, but is smart, knows what needs to be done, is proactive, and can do it at a higher level. Because like you and I sound different, right? We forget the way each other sounds after 10 seconds if we know we're taken care of. So I would say the very first thing is it is important, and we don't ignore that, but like we want to hire off of skills and their ability rather than off of look and sound. Well, it's still important. So I would say that's the first thing. And then the next thing is, are we setting them up for success? Like we talked a little bit, and we come in, we do a training, we call it winning with a VA, because we want to make sure we have communication in place. Do we have cultural things that they need to be aware of, right? Because the way I handle a VA from Latin America is completely different than the way I handle a VA from the Philippines, right? Because there's a few cultural things we need to be aware of. And so like we go over those things. And so I don't know if that answers it properly or if I was just rambling there.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. We have plenty of team members in the Philippines who ultimately we don't necessarily need them to have the best, the clearest English accent, because they're just not going to be like a client-facing person. And then to your other point about setting them up for success, we have several copy editors based out of the Philippines. And as part of their onboarding or hiring process, we have them take a couple hours out of every week to go through a 44-hour entomology course that's all online, right? So setting them up for success to help them understand the industry, or really like, pests and bugs and all the things that they're going to be reading about and needing to be copy editing for. So being willing to invest in them, right, in order to make sure that they are stood up for success, and then layering that on top of really clear standard operating procedures and having really clear documentation in place so that they know what is the standard, what am I expecting from them. The clearer that we make their job and the more, we invest in them, the better off they are. We really don't have a turnover problem when it comes to just our employees in general, but certainly our VAs. I mean, when we hire them, we have a very specific vetting process, and then once they're on the team, they typically stay around for years. Speaking of turnover, I know that is something that some operators are going to worry about. What does VA retention actually look like if you do it right?
If you do it right now, obviously no one's perfect. We're not perfect. I'm human, you're human, everyone, you know what I mean? We mess up. Right now, we have over a 91% retention rate, right? So if we get you a VA, 91% of the time we're keeping them with you, right? Does stuff happen? Sure, you know what I mean? Everyone's the best during their interview in the first 2 weeks on their job. And so like before and the reason why we can do so well and we can promise they're going to do a great job, one is we have a replacement guarantee, so we'll replace them free of charge. But the second thing is before if we meet with you and you say, hey, these are the skills, these are things that we want, we've already put them through training. We've already put them through vetting. We've already put them through English tests and check their hardware and make sure that they understand the requirements of the job. And so like when we bring you 3 or 4 candidates, we've vetted them, right, at a very high level to make sure they're going to be successful in your business. And so you can expect great things from our VAs. 100%. And heavens forbid it doesn't happen, dude, we got people on the bench waiting to go in. So that's our job, is to make sure we find you rock stars so you're not rifling through a million different resumes.
Yeah, and maybe said another way, if you go, so you and your team have put together a process for vetting, right? A recruiting process, and you've also put together a process for training. So you are helping people skip the learning curve of having to figure those things out themselves, which makes sense why you have such a high success rate, right? And so if someone were to go out and do this on their own and really kind of fall on their face the first several times, turnover is probably going to be significantly higher than if they, work with someone who really knows what they're doing, like you guys, who's incentivized to make sure that when you place them, they stick and they do a great job. In terms of delineating between, if I'm a pest control operator and I try to go do this on my own versus if I hire you guys, dramatically increases my chances of success, right? Of finding the right VA. What might I expect cost to be if I were to go try to find my own VA in terms of maybe, dollars per hour versus if I use you guys?
Dude, it's kind of funny. We're on message boards all the time, right? And so I was on this pest control one, and they're like, "Hey, I just found this person out of the Philippines that I can work for $2 an hour." And I'm like, you roll your eyes because you're like, okay, dude, that's not real life. Can they even talk? You know what I mean? Like, we pay them a lot more than that. And so, like, you go and do it on your own, dude. It's a loaded question. You can find anyone. Like, you can go find someone for $2 an hour. Again, are they going to be worth the crap? Probably not, right? With us, in the Philippines, we're probably $8 to $9 an hour, right? For us to get a VA, a solid, high-level person. We're not talking an uneducated person. We're talking people with bachelor's and master's degrees that are working in your business. I want a customer service rep, and they got 10 years of customer service experience, right? So we're getting high-level people, $8 to $9 an hour. Latin America, you're probably 9 to 10 is what you could expect. If you're going to go and do it on your own, you'd probably save $1 to $2, right? Off of that. But then at the same time, and we can get into it, and that's another, is like, are you set up legally to do it? Do you have them registered? Do you know the labor laws in their country? Do you have to file? Do you know how to write them up properly? You can't have someone working in your business and not paying taxes on them, right? So are you set up with the U.S. government, their government? You know what I mean? So there's like, by the time you go and do that, probably not saving much, but you could save some. Yeah.
And that's a really reasonable rate, because I would say the most common rate that I see out there, so maybe you guys have wiggle room to charge a lot more, is probably more like $15 an hour. Anytime I've scoped out a VA agency, that seems to be kind of like the typical cost that I'm seeing. So, and like I said, if you work with someone who really knows what they're doing, like you guys, incentivized to make sure that they're successful, the odds of you succeeding are much, much higher. So that's, just so everyone knows that it's great that you guys have that rate. You mentioned sales, admin, and even mentioned personal assistants. Can you walk through a few examples of how pest control companies are using VAs effectively? Like, what specific roles in the company are they filling?
Yeah, probably the number one position we fill for pest control companies are customer service reps. That's number one. Okay? And so we get that more than anything else. We do get a lot of sales, okay? But again, we want to talk with you. Hey, are they set up for success, right? Sales at every organization means a million different things. And so we do get a lot of those. A lot of back office work, data analysis, data entry, those types of things. Hey, we have all these. We've got Pest Pack or Pest Routes or Brio Stack or whoever, Gorilla Desk, whoever our provider is, and we've got these reports, but how do we make them applicable? So we get a lot that go in, mine the data, put it into a scorecard, put it into a report, and build these out for the business. I would say those are the three main things. And then we get people that are special, like get it, and they're like, okay, I need someone to do my books. I need someone to be over collections. I need someone to do quality assurance, right? Like, just monitor phone calls, and here's a scorecard, and we're going to grade them, and those types of things.
Have you seen operators cut overhead or even drive top line growth using VAs, and any real numbers or stories that stand out?
Yeah, 100%. So if we put up a drawing board here, right, and we just did the basic math, right? If you're working somebody in your business at $18 to $19 an hour, you're having them work full time, you get a VA for $8 to $9 an hour. After you pay payroll taxes and workers' comp, we're going to save you about $28,000 a year over that US based person. Now, if you're going to pay health insurance, you got to buy them a computer in your office and those types of things, you're probably another $500 to $600 a month, right? Which is another $6,000 to $7,000. So roughly, if you're doing those things, if you're an organization, you're going to save about $35,000. So let's say you get 3 extra, you're just saved $100,000 in your business. And now I have an extra $100,000 to pay Pesty Marketing to go do pay-per-click for me, or to increase my backlink strategy, right? So 100%, right? Like if I have an extra $100,000 in my business and I'm putting it into marketing, I'm gonna, instead of 20%, I should be seeing 35% growth year over year, right? So 100%, we see it all day. The normal process we see is someone comes in, they get a VA, 2 months later, they say, Seth, I need 2 more. This is what I'm thinking I can have them do, right? And then we kind of grow from there and we work with them. Like that's the normal process. So yeah, if you're not using a VA, I mean, we have the largest pest control company in the US down to 1 man using us, right? So like you're just gonna get left behind. We're all gonna make larger margins than you and have more to buy those ads in front of you.
And the calculation isn't just in what you're saving per head were you to hire someone US, but it's also in the opportunity cost of where that money could be going, right? To your point, if you're saving $30,000 by hiring a VA versus hiring someone US based, and you just freed up that $30,000 to then plow back into marketing, and you're going to turn that $30,000 into $90,000. Say. Well, now that delta is massive, right? Because you don't realize how much you're missing out on by hiring people who are just costing you a lot more money.
And you've got to look at it too, right? Like, and I'd love to hear your experience, right? You use virtual assistants, you use offshore people very well with your company, but like we saw about a 30% increase in productivity once we went all VAs, right? Like I love America, I love it, but like for these jobs, my people were watching Netflix or on Instagram, scrolling the gram or whatever, to instead of, oh, cool, I've got some extra time, let me go do this. Not that it doesn't happen, but like we just had people that it's a career for them. It's not just a job. So they're more engaged and more locked in is what we saw. Again, if we have the proper parameters. So like, dude, I'm going to ask you a question. Like, have you seen that? Have you seen an increased productivity with yours? Or are you like, cool, I'm saving, but also getting more work than I would?
It's hard to say because everyone on the team tracks their time. So every hour work is logged, which when we have tasks that need to be repeated or you have 2 different people doing the same task, it becomes very clear to us who is more productive. And so we know what standard to hold. So we don't really get ourselves in a position where that productivity is unknown because everything is measured in our business. All the way from our VAs to the people in, stateside who work account. We use a combination of a project management software and a time tracking software. And so that makes it I don't know that I would ever be able to hire someone and for them to be unproductive. Not that we micromanage, but you just can't deny the productivity. And we have such a high standard for everyone that we hire. Frankly, if they're not meeting that standard, they just, they end up moving on. But if you're not tracking your time or know exactly how productive someone should be in your company, I would imagine that becomes a lot more difficult. I don't know how I would hold people accountable if I didn't know that they should be able to produce X in Y amount of time, and that I can compare everyone apples to apples in terms of productivity.
Yeah. So we were able to, for us, we were able to answer more calls in a day, right? For whatever reason, perfect. They wouldn't miss it. So we could see cool, my VA is able to handle 50 calls where the other person was handling 30, right, in a day. And so for us, it was huge because we could do more with less because they care about the business, right? And you sound like you have a fantastic process in place, which that's what you should do a podcast on. Is that how you keep them productive?
I mean, they care about the business. They care about the business because the business cares about them, and they also just frankly care about their job. That same individual I mentioned earlier, Charlie, who's really gone above and beyond. He's received promotions, both in terms of financially and also in terms of his title. And one of the best feelings I've ever had running a business was when he sent me a message on Slack and said, "Hey, just so you know, I was just able to buy me and my family a home." And that was just the coolest thing to me, because I'm like, it's just such a win-win that I get to, enjoy the delta in terms of his salary compared to what I would otherwise have to pay. And he still gets a salary that is healthy enough that he's able to very comfortably support his family. And then that he would feel excited enough to share that with me. It was awesome.
Dude, it's so cool. Like, I just love to share those experiences you get, right? Like, we get those calls. Dude, Seth, thank you so much. This is the first time I've had financial stability in a job, right? And you're just like, dude, how is that possible? Like, that's one thing you should be able to have going to a job. And so, like, you're able to provide someone with ability to buy a home for an excellent rate, like for these jobs that you're getting pest control companies in the US, right? 18, 20 bucks an hour. You can't go buy a home off of that. But like, we can give these people these opportunities they can't get. And so in return, they're excited and grateful to come work in our businesses because he doesn't have that opportunity in the Philippines where he's at, or it's slimmed it up.
So you work with a lot of pest control companies. What traits do the most successful ones have in common when it comes to running lean, scalable operations?
Dude, honestly, best companies have processes and accountabilities in place, right? Like, and it's hard to do. Like, I struggle with this. Like, I talk to people all the time, like, dude, like technicians, I can track, okay, what's your completion rate? I know what your reservice rate is. I know what's your revenue per day. What are we getting, right? Like, how many upsells are you getting? So like, we can dial that in really well and give a great scorecard for a technician, right? From an office person, it's really hard. And so the ones that do well have their KPIs in place, and they know this is what we accept, right? They have, scores that they monitor their people off of. We'll go back and listen to calls and judge them and say, hey, this was good, this was bad. How many reviews did you get? So the ones that, and it's not that hard to do, right? And we talk about that in our training is like, do we have a scorecard or a way for them to know that they're being productive? And that works with VAs, it works with US people, right? Because I always use the model, if you and I are playing basketball, right? We're shooting hoops. The minute I say, hey, Andrew, let's go ahead and play one-on-one, all right? First 1 to 10, right? What happens is now you're elbowing me in the back, right? You're crossing me up, like you're not letting me score, right? Because we're keeping score because we have a scoreboard. And so the ones that are successful have a process and a scoreboard in place because when progress is measured, progress improves, right? So I would say, and I don't get a chance to look under the hood very often of businesses, but from the 10,000 view that I get, the ones that have processes in place and can hold them accountable, ones that excel very well with their VAs.
That's been my experience as well. And this is coming from, not just running pesty marketing, but also from running a previous marketing agency that still operates called Bananas Marketing. And the cool thing about running that agency was that we service a lot of different companies, a lot of different business models, different industries, but exactly what you just said, documentation and accountability are a common theme throughout every one of those companies that is performing at the highest level. And that's really where I learned it from, cutting my teeth in that previous agency and realizing that pattern. And then when I started Pesty, it was like, okay, like I have to run this thing from day one in a way that is positioned to scale, right? Because you can only scale, you can only run lean if you have documentation and then accountability for your team members in place. VAs or not. So that makes sense. Yeah, and that's the common theme I'm hearing is throughout this conversation, right? It's like the same things that are going to set your US-based team up for success are the exact same things that are going to set up your offshore team for success. So if you're struggling with your onshore team and there is any ounce of it is due to things that are within your control, like measurement, accountability, clarity, documentation, those things are going to spill over into a VA. It's not like that the VA is going to solve those problems for you. You might have a different problem where maybe you're in a market where you want to hire locally and just locally the pool of candidates available is really small. It's just you can't find that talent locally that you need, but you do have the systems in place, you do have the accountability, you do have the measurement systems. Well, then you're set up for success with a VA because the problem really comes down to your pool of candidates and who you can actually choose from.
And there's one thing, right? Like we can all improve on our business, and we looked, if you and I laid everything out about our business, you can can be like, Seth, you suck at this, you need to improve at this, and I could do that about yours, you're doing this good or bad. And so like one thing I've noticed is we kind of tripped upon it is like my VA, my first VA that we got, Maria, is like we actually used her, once we got to that $1 million mark at first, like we used her to help create those processes, right? Because as a business owner, sometimes we just have so much on our plate that it's like that's the last thing in our mind, and it's important that we do it. And so like that was a huge win for us, is because as like the visionary in the business, is I get with these great ideas, but I never see them implemented. I never see them. And so like for me, getting a VA is it took that off my plate. Now it was like, hey, Maria, she literally built our scorecard for our business and she tracks it. And we go over that every Tuesday in our managers meeting. And so like, having said that, like if you're swamped, like get a VA, get a high level to have them start to put it together. And then you come back to you and be like, hey, this is what I created. What do you think? Right? Like I would say that's the beginning point. So if you don't have those in it, it's not like you're up the creek without a paddle. There's no end in sight. Like I used a VA to free up my time to create those in the business.
Yeah, and to make this a little more tactical for people. So my recommendation when it comes to even creating an SOP, right? Because maybe there's someone on your team or you yourself are doing something over and over and over again. To streamline the process of getting the minimum viable documentation in place, download a tool called Loom, Loom. It's free. It allows you to make a screen share video really easily. Then what you can do is you can take the transcript from that video, put it into ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to turn this video and this transcript I just made into a standard operating procedure so I can hand it off to my team member, and then have it create that basic version of it for you so that at least your VA has like a starting point from which they can build off of. And that entire thing only takes as long as your process takes, right? If it takes you 5 minutes to show them how to do it once, then it takes you another 5 minutes to put that transcript into ChatGPT and turn it into an SOP. Well, now this thing that you made a really big deal out of, turns out it only took you 10 minutes to put together the rudimentary documentation required to set your person off on the right foot. I do that all the time. People make a bigger deal out of it, I think, than it needs to be.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head. That's literally one of our trainings. One, we talk about Loom. Such a cool tool, right? Such a cool tool. We pay for the paid versions, and it's free, right? Like, yeah. Like we use the paid one, but I used the free one for years before, right? But we always say like, hey, if you don't have SOPs in your business, sometimes that's right. We should, but like if you don't, like it's not the end of the world. I say teach them, create a Loom video, and then my advice would be have them go put it in chat, have them create it, and then come back and teach you, right? Because there's so many things. It gives them ownership in it because they don't want to come back and give you a crappy SOP they created, right? They want to make sure it's a win. And now you've just created a process in your business where the next person you hired, guess what? That VA is the best person to teach them, not you, because they literally outlined and documented the whole process. So you said it better. Like I said, you should be teaching this on how to use VAs.
To take this a step even further, if you want to get even fancier with it, my next recommendation would be go to Google or go to ChatGPT first and say, hey, what goes into an SOP? Like what specifically should I even put into a standard operating procedure in order to make it effective? Then take what the instructions that it gives you and copy and paste that into the next chat, including your transcript. And now not only do you have a basic SOP, but you actually have one that based off of something that is supposed to be good. Like your outputs from ChatGPT are only as good as your inputs, which actually brings me to something else I think is worth touching on. Do you train your VAs on how to use ChatGPT or how to make them more like AI enabled so they're even more productive?
We do have a training course, and part of that is we talk about, hey, how to use AI, how to use it, and you can use it for emails and SOPs, and like, so we do have a training course that we go over, like, hey, how to use AI, how to use it, how to implement it. It's fantastic. We should be using it. So yes, we do.
Totally. Yeah, and especially for the writing aspect of things, right? Talk about like customer service, sending emails. There are a lot of people on my team, my offshore talent, who I give them custom GPTs. I get kind of fancy with it, but they consistently go back to them and use them so that they can button up their English and get really clear when they're writing. And they also use it for comprehension. So if they get an email or they get something in writing from someone on their team, from a customer, and they're having a hard time understanding what this person is saying, just they copy and paste that into ChatGPT and say, I'm confused about what this is saying. Help clear this up for me so that I can better understand. So it goes both ways. For the operator on the fence about hiring their first VA, what's your best advice for getting started right away? Just taking the leap.
Honestly, I'd say give me a call. Give us a call. Happy to sit down and talk to you and say this is the good and the bad. Let you make a decision from there. Obviously, that's what we'd love to talk to you, because I think And I'll be honest, right? Like, I own a pest control company, we run one, and so I think that would be it. Next thing is I would start to make a list of what can I offshore off my plate, right? What can I get rid of? What can I give to this person that would free me up to make me? Maybe you're the best at being a salesman. Maybe you're not sales, but you're a great technician, and that's what you want to do in your business. Then you need to find somebody that can go and do these other tasks, right? So I would say that would be number one, is find out what would free me up to do what I do best in my business.
Cool. And where can people find you if they want to go look?
So focusvirtualassistants.com. You can email me, Seth at focusvirtualassistants.com. You can find us on all the socials. Send me a smoke signal, carrier pigeon. Anyway, man, we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Seth. I really appreciate it. This is great and super valuable, I'm sure, for everyone.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andrew. I always love a friend like you being able to jump on and cut it up. So thank you.